Well, my friends, before we get on to our exclusive interview with a councillor whistleblower who is blowing the whistle on the migrant madness that's enveloping the entire country, but this part of the country, I think, is exposing the rot at the core of the British establishment stitch-up over the illegal migration madness that really is running rampant throughout towns and cities near you. I want to start by, first of all, telling you that I sympathise and I know exactly how Alison Pearson, the Telegraph journalist, Britain's greatest columnist at that newspaper, I know exactly how she feels. When I saw that story about her being investigated by the police, I had flashbacks, right, to my own brush with Britain's policing priorities back in 2020. You might remember, if you've been following this channel long enough, when the coppers came sniffing around me over the David Starkey interview about Black Lives Matter during the madness over some dead criminal in the United States of America. Not because I said anything untoward, mind you, but because apparently platforming someone's views makes you guilty of stirring up racial hatred. That's what I was investigated for, threatened with arrest and all the rest of it. Exactly the similar kind of thing that Alison Pearson stands accused of today. I have a non-crime hate incident recorded against my name. So that means, friends, if I ever wanted to go into any job that requires a deep background check, well, jog on, I couldn't. So it's been clear to me for many years now that in modern Britain... Oh, we've cut off early there. Hang on, I'm not finished. Well, my friends, before we get on to investigate a burglary or some yob smashing up the shop, she even said herself, I thought they were here because they were closing the street for Remembrance Day services. No, nothing of the sort. These officers of the law turned up because of a tweet she'd posted that hadn't broken the law. A tweet posted a year ago. The punchline here is that they wouldn't even tell her what the tweet was or who had reported her for this heinous hate speech. I mean, talk about Kafka-esque. Essex police claim that this is about material likely or intended to cause racial hatred. But even that explanation, it feels about as sturdy as this Labour government, to tell you that much. A wet paper bag would have more force and structure. We're supposed to believe that a respected columnist that is a best-selling author, she's had a very successful film made out of one of her books, she suddenly had a hard left turn into hate speech. Pull the other one, sod off. The reality is here, we've let the concept of hate crime spiral out of control. So much so that even the most anodyne of opinions can actually be weaponised against you if they ruffle the wrong feathers. So if you say something about Hamas, for example, which Alison has over the last year, well, you've got a target on your back. And as Elon Musk, the tech titan, has warned, this needs to stop. And let's not kid ourselves about where this leads. This isn't about protecting vulnerable groups anymore, which is what the 1986 Public Order Act was actually meant to do under Mrs. Thatcher. I very much doubt Mrs. Thatcher had in mind that one day they'd be trawling through the internet because some columnist at the Telegraph, a paper she rather liked, might say something untoward. This is about ideology. It's about enforcing the dogma of a woke elite, making you think twice before you press send on a view that might not go with the mainstream's grain. They've got a monopoly on what constitutes acceptable speech. You know, we've seen, actually, over recent years, you misgender someone, well, that's a crime. You get thrown off X and maybe in the slammer. Post an edgy joke on YouTube, well, there you are, that's a crime. And now, even mainstream columnists like Alison Pearson find themselves hauled over the coals. But are we surprised? Are you at home surprised? Let me know in the comment section, because I don't think we should have allowed it to ever get this far. We've allowed creeping censorship to infest our laws to the point where the police are effectively acting as the armed wing of the cancel culture vultures, you know, armed by Stonewall and these other pressure groups. But we can't stop there, because this isn't just a matter of freedom of expression. It's a matter of priorities, as I say. While officers are busy going through your timelines, real crimes go uninvestigated. You look at this list: burglaries, assaults, crimes that actually ruin people's lives, knives. Look at the Essex Policing's stats alone in isolation. Real crime takes a backseat because the police are more interested in protecting feelings than protecting property or people. It's easier. There's a pat on the back from left-wing vested interests. And what happens when we challenge this madness? Well, we're told it's only about stopping a few racists and fascists. Absolute bloody nonsense. Everyone's a racist and a fascist these days. Your mask has slipped. It's not the fringe lunatics being targeted. It's anyone who dares step out of line. I mean, look at the fact that we banged up all of these people recently for posting things on social media, whilst others for knife crime and all the rest of it get lesser sentences. It's time to draw a line. Free speech isn't free, and if you have to actually second guess yourself every word you say for fear that the bobby on the beat might knock at your door. Even the most repugnant ideas, and Alison's tweets are obviously far from that, should be met with debate, not a police investigation. I was always told sunlight was the best disinfectant. The moment we let the state dictate what we can and can't say, we'll lose the ability to challenge it. And that, my friends, is a far more dangerous road ever to go down than letting someone post a spicy opinion on X, whether you like it or not. Here's my message to the police. Get your asses back to doing what you're paid to do. What Robert Peel, founder of the police, established you actually to do. Policing without fear or favour. Stop playing the part of the woke mob's enforcers and start protecting the public. Because I tell you what, Alison Pearson, she ain't a bloody threat. And to her and anyone else so caught up in this farce, I say remember this: you are not alone. Join the Free Speech Union. They can't arrest us all. There's a growing army of us who are sick to the back teeth of this nonsense that's happening to our country. I mean, it's somewhat ironic that it happened on Remembrance Sunday, by the way, because I don't think those lads died, so that someone like Alison Pearson could be threatened with the clink for posting something opinion-wise on a social media platform. We can't stay quiet on these issues any longer, and I certainly won't. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That is a solemn pledge that I make to each and every one of you. God, I'm just looking at my hair there. It was up like, I look like Beaker from the Muppet Show. Anyway, moving that on ever so slightly. I've just been accused of not being live. I am bloody live, thank you very much. Look at the time on this phone. I'm showing you all my text messages, but it's today's time. And look, all of the comments there coming in thick and fast. Thank you very much for joining the Darren Grimes Show with Reasoned UK. I'm delighted to make your acquaintance and have your company. If you are here for the first time, thank you very much. Hit that subscribe button and the like button. It really does help us get through the YouTube algorithm, which is stacked against the kind of free speech outlets like ours. So thank you very much for joining and for all your comments. Ian has just commented in asking how you join the Free Speech Union. Ian, if you just Google Join Free Speech Union, it should come up with a link to the freespeechunion.org, and you're able to join via that. And I mean that, reiterating what I said there, join, because you never know when you might need it. Whether you're a journalist like Alison Pearson or you're a shop worker in Asda, believe me, I've heard all sorts of stories. Now, someone has just messaged in asking if one of my notifications was an app called Grindr. I beg your pardon. It certainly was not. It certainly was not. Right, anyway, I think it's time to introduce my panel before I get even more scurrilous allegations made against my character. I am delighted to say that I'm joined, as ever, by Younes, Chloe and Alex, and they will join me in the grotto right now. I'm assuming that actually a lot of people won't know what Grindr is, and if you don't know, I wouldn't suggest you Google it. I wouldn't suggest you Google it. Victoria says, "Oh, thanks. I was wondering that." Victoria, what are you trying to say? Anyway, guys, how are you all doing?
Good, thank you. How are
I'm
we there?
good. I
You still
enjoyed
turned
that
your
comment.
notifications off.
Much better than yes, I have. Yes, much better than Alison Pearson, I assume.
Indeed.
Yeah.
How scary is that, though? I mean, on all of the days for it to have happened on Remembrance Sunday,
I know.
it's just the timing couldn't have been more poignant in some respects, because I think it might have helped so many of us, if we'd heard on the day, remember what the sacrifice was all about. And it seems we've slipped so far, not even 100 years since World War II, but obviously over 100 since World War I. But pretty scary stuff. I think there's so many people who tweet and who are journalists that are now just fearful for everything they write, and a little bit of criticism they have is just under complete scrutiny by the police. It's insane.
Chloe, did you know that about Reason's early days, where I was, because you weren't here at the very start when we launched this channel, and I went through exactly what Alison is going through right now, and you sort of think, well, I'm going to say whatever I want because I think it's a cause worth fighting for. And at the time, I was talking about Black Lives Matter and interviewing Dr. David Starkey, who, as a consequence, by the way, lost everything, which I don't think was remotely proportionate. And I experienced it firsthand, the chilling censorship that's running through British life, which is making people think that they can't say things. And I think this is all deliberate. I really do. It's the British policing, the College of Policing. They release guidance on these things. And I think it's deliberate guidance pushed by activists to actually encourage people to shut their mouths.
I mean, it is really, really scary what is happening. And, we had this big scare about free speech during the riots, but we've now been given a big reminder that this is not over. I know you had nightmares with that interview that you did, Darren, but I didn't realize you had one of these non-crime hate incidents lodged against you. And I mean, when we were looking at the riots, we were seeing people being locked up in prison for posts which supposedly incited violence. Now, plenty of those, I do not think that they incited violence. I think it was quite a stretch to say that they did. But those are the ones which the police considered to be on the serious end, and you do actually deserve a criminal record for. Whereas these non-crime hate incidents, these are being handed out left, right, and centre. They are giving out. They are giving out tens of thousands of these a year. And so if they think that a post that you have made is, quote, prejudice, they can give you a non-crime hate incident. And you might think, oh, well, the clue's in the word non-crime. You're not a criminal. But this will come up on a DBS check. Now, I've had to do DBS checks for all sorts of work that I've had to do. I work with children, with tutoring and sports coaching. I could be banned from doing those things altogether.
Yeah.
Because, and someone who is a kind employer, if you have a DBS check and something like this comes up, they might be kind enough to let you explain, and they might look at the tweet that you've put up and say, and, if they're not on board with all the woke nonsense, they might let it go. But realistically, any employer, if someone gets off any flag whatsoever on their DBS, they're not going to pick you. They will pick somebody else with a clear DBS check. It is not worth the crazy hassle. Yeah. So, just because of one little tweet that's considered prejudice, I mean, that's so vague. You could lose your hopes of ever getting a proper job again, which I think is genuinely terrifying.
Yeah. By the way, quick question to the panel. Can you actually hear me?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the comments are saying that I'm very quiet, which isn't a complaint that I often get, I must say. But anyway...
Darren quiet compared to Chloe. Maybe I'm too shouty and I need to shut up a bit.
Who knows? Anyway, right. Moving on. I believe in the equality of the sexes, so be as shouty as you like. Younes, are you worried about this? Because you're vocal. I mean, you speak about issues such as the one issue that you both have spoken about, and by both I mean you and Alison Pearson. I think this goes back because they said a year ago, well, what do we know that happened a year ago that Alison was very vocal on, and she's been very supportive of Britain's Jewish community while talking about Hamas. I think it's related to these issues, and that actually she's probably had a vexatious complaint made against her around these issues. Does that concern you?
Yes, and I just want to echo what Chloe said, because think about it. If you have a criminal record, then, for example, you can't go to America, and it also restricts your, chances of traveling. It restricts your chances of getting a job. So just because you have an opinion on social media, but that's what they do. They do these things to shut people up. But I feel like people need to be more resilient. In terms of Alison Pearson, I actually don't think what she said was that offensive. As a matter of fact, I do think there's a rise of Islamism and there's a rise in terrorist-related groups in the UK, and we should be allowed to criticize bad ideas. And I really salute Elon Musk. I don't think we should cower down. I know a lot of people are going to see this, and because of the reasons already stated, people are going to be like, oh, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get a criminal record. But at the end of the day, this is how tyrants take control. By doing these incremental things, shutting people up step by step by step. And I just don't think we should give in. This is ridiculous. I give you an example of what happened in my country when the Islamic Republic came. At first, they were like, no, you don't have to wear the hijab. Then after 1 year, they started imposing it. And now you have to be covered head to toe. And that's what happens over time if you don't challenge these things.
Yeah, I mean, where do we go from here then, do you think? Because this isn't going to get better under Sir Keir Starmer, right? This is going to get a hell of a lot worse. I mean, I posted yesterday saying, Chairman Mao came for the farmers. You go back throughout time, all of these communist leaders came for the farmers. They're coming for the farmers. Well, guess what? They also came for speech. They also came for dissenting voices of speech that were... against the regimes of that time, because in speech they are able to criticize and bring them down, and they want full control. So where does it go from here? Because we're playing out the communist rule book, really.
Yeah, and I'm quite sad that we always speak about the same thing over and over and over and over again every single week in this podcast, but that's the pressing issue. Our freedom of speech is being taken away from us. Okay, and that is a very important thing. The reason why it's the First Amendment in America is because freedom of speech is the most important thing in a democracy. When you don't have freedom of speech, then everything else collapses with it. And I mean, Trump winning gives me some hope. I hope maybe he can put some pressure on, or maybe Elon Musk can do something to, as he done a few months ago with the whole two-tier policing. And I felt like that will almost shame this Labour government into, maybe not taking action or maybe changing the laws, because this is ridiculous. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you're inciting violence. Inciting violence under the current rule book means specifically saying, okay, tonight, go to this address and kill Chloe Dobbs doing that. That is inciting violence, for example.
Yes, please don't do
that.
Don't give them any ideas, Younes.
Yeah, no, I don't want to give anyone any ideas. I'm sure you have enough enemies already, Chloe. But that's what it means. It doesn't mean saying, oh, I disagree with Hamas, or I disagree with Islam or Judaism or anything as an ideology. That's not inciting violence. You should be able to criticize bad ideas in society. And it just shows how much of a coward this government is, because they don't want to get criticized themselves. They hide behind this, cloud of empathy and we care about people so much. No, you're just trying to protect yourselves because you're corrupted and you're trying not to be exposed.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Alex, that you might actually have a non-crime hate incident, but you just don't know about it because, you don't have to be told. The police don't have to notify you. A complaint's made, and if the police determine that actually it's not of criminal merit, then they will record it against your name. And the only way you'd be able to find out about it is through a freedom of information request to the constabulary in question. So there is... To me, that is textbook Orwell.
Yeah. You just nailed it. And I was talking about this earlier on today. I mean, we've seen, obviously, Trump's got this new Department of Government Efficiency, and he's, going to be scrapping a bunch of government departments and giving people transparency. And one of the things that we've seen, this slow move over centuries and generations, is that government cover up and hide more and more and more from the British public as time goes by. That allows this level of cronyism and corruption we've seen, astounding levels from Labour in their first 18 weeks. 18 weeks, and we've seen record levels of corruption and cronyism exposed again and again. And unfortunately, what's happened is a subdued public who have been completely battered down by and had the weaponization of the police force and lawfare against our own citizens to scare you into complying. It is textbook Orwell. It's thought speech. It's literally stopping freedom of expression in its tracks in order to create this sort of socialist agenda that has lasted a really long time. And we just keep on getting closer and closer to George Orwell's vision every year that goes by. And it feels now that we're on the roller coaster and we're going up this massive hill that doesn't seem to go backwards. I'm just absolutely terrified. I think that anyone who has to second guess writing a tweet, I mean, for God's sake, how far have we got? I put up the crime stats in Essex. That's where Alison Pearson was arrested. Sorry, not arrested, but was warned in Essex. And they have like a 2.5% record rate of solving vehicle crime, for God's sake. It's getting crazy, Darren. It's getting absolutely ridiculous. Stop policing tweets, police the streets.
Alex, if you look on the other, there were 2 Telegraph articles on this today, and if you look at one of the other ones that I did a video on, they compared the stats to 2016, and the stats on vehicle theft, like the number that I responded to or whatever, has fallen from 2016 from 9% to 2.7%. I think it's important to recognise how big of a drop that's been. That is absolutely appalling. And you see similar stats for burglaries and whatnot, arrests per officer. It used to be around 2008, it was above 10. Now we're looking at about 4.5 arrests per year per officer. And I highly doubt that is because the people on the streets of Britain are more behaved. It's because they're too busy knocking on doors, complaining about people's tweets and whatnot. And I mean, I really think that this non-crime hate incident thing, and I didn't realize that you don't have to be told about that. That's a good point, Darren. I feel like giving people this non-crime hate incident where you then can't get a job, I mean, it is just like the social credit score thing in China. Literally, I mean, you say it's textbook Orwell, Darren. I think it absolutely is. But I mean, I'm so grateful for Elon Musk. Like, I feel like he's really stood up for us, and it's a shame that he is not a Brit here in Britain who's able to have more power. But I think the fact that he is so close to Trump now, that gives me faith, because I think that Elon, he really cares about us. He really cares about what's going on. He's been really taken up, he's such a busy man. I mean, he's running, I can't even count how many huge businesses, yet he still takes the time to call out Keir Starmer, the British police, when this horrendous stuff happens to us on X. He's spoken about it on several podcasts. So, I just hope that if the situation here gets a lot worse, at least whilst Trump is in power, that Elon will say to Trump, like, look, you need to do something, like put a sanction on the UK, like, use tariffs, Trump loves using tariffs to try and get people to behave. Do something to make the Brits behave and give people their free speech back. I really hope that Elon and Trump will stand up for us if it gets really bad.
Well, one thing I would say is that I actually think that the constant simultaneous pursuit of freedom by the Americans in whether that be censorship online, whether that be on taxes, whether that be on how they treat their farmers, whether that be on a whole host of issues, I think the contrast between what the Labour government are doing, this sort of sclerotic approach of being absolutely unable to do anything other than clamp down on people's freedom and liberty, that actually the British people will look across the pond and all the news articles coming out of America and be like, hang on a minute, why are we suffering in this country? Our pensioners are freezing, whilst Ed Miliband jets around the world being a complete and utter millionaire menace, effectively, and making us colder and poorer, and all these other things, whilst America is prospering, it's warm, it's going to have energy security, it's going to have the right to say whatever it wants under its various amendments, and that actually this country is going to hell in a handcart. So I think the Trump administration coming in will be a blessing, ultimately, for the United Kingdom, and I really mean that. I'm delighted. I'm still delighted. Maybe I'll never not be delighted. It feels like 2016 all over again, and that was a pretty good year to me. Alex,
I just
you
really
say
wanted to quickly say something off the back of what was brought up earlier, because we talk to a lot of young people in what we do with Reasoned, and I have had countless young people tell me time and time again they would love to get on Twitter and they would love to use social media and do what we do, but they are so scared they will never have a job. That is not something that is shared by the left, and that should very quickly tell everyone that's listening to this podcast exactly where the two-tier justice of our country falls. If you have right-wing opinions and you have opinions that are anti-immigration, you are seen as a racist. You can be locked up. You can have a police knocking at your door. You may never get a job again. That is what two-tier justice is in this country. You can critique some things, but if you're on the far left, you can critique everything. You can critique absolutely everything and get away with it. That is two-tier justice.
I mean,
can I
one
just
of
add
our
last
viewers,
2
Paul,
points
says
that you guys just touched on it quickly, but
Younes, hang on. I'm just going to read out this tweet from this YouTube post from Paul, who says 400 people jailed in Russia for speaking out against the government. 3,000 of them have been jailed here for speaking out against the government. I mean, it really does make you think.
Yeah, that's what Konstantin Kisin said. I don't know if you know him from Trigonometry. There was Russia is this authoritarian Putin, so bad, blah blah blah. But only 400 people went to jail there compared to 3,000. And as Chloe said, this is a social credit system. There's soon going to be a system where we're going to have social credit, and then it's going to keep track of everything that you said on Twitter. And then soon, before you know it, they'll say, well, you had one too many offensive tweets, so we're going to stop access to your money, or you have to come and see us in a police station. So we are heading that direction unless we manage to get out of this somehow.
Well, staying on Elon Musk then for a minute, we've had some very sad news, which I've no doubt will massively trouble the tech titan and leave him in the depths of despair, because today, in a slew of the left leaving the platform because they've got their knickers in a twist over Donald Trump's victory, who, of course, Elon Musk endorsed and is now part of the administration, well, The Guardian have decided that they're leaving X. They're quitting. They're off. I've lost it. There it is.
Oh, I'm so sad.
Yeah, I know.
No, tell me about it. That's going to be such a huge miss for X. It's
the Guardian have quit X, and Elon Musk, must be beside himself, absolutely distraught, and all the rest of it. But this guy did a absolutely phenomenal thread. And he is called Basil on X.
Great.
And he says, feel free to add your own tweets. And he goes through some Guardian headlines. I'll just read out a few of them. Is it okay for scientists to weep over climate change? The budget should be less macho. How about it, boys? Stop calling women girls. It's either patronising or sexually suggestive. I mean, I don't know what you meant to call them. Barbecue is an American tradition of enslaved Africans and Native Americans.
Oh my God.
There's no reason to debate guacamole. It's already gentrified beyond good taste. What straight men don't understand about lesbians, and can foie gras ever be ethical?
What?
My toddler is vegan. What's the problem?
What's the problem?
That should be child abuse. I'm sorry, that really should be child abuse. Help, is my quinoa killing the planet? I mean, it's on all of our tongues, let's be honest. This is a concern for all of us. Quinoa, good, evil, or just really complicated? And can vegans stomach the unpalatable truth about quinoa? I dread the day my daughter's poos get smaller. Bottling the smell of dead people won't capture their essence. Teaching my daughter to cook does not make me a bad feminist. Just how gay is anal play, really? I created
what the fuck? How is that an actual news title?
I can't believe this. Yeah, but he's this.
I created the ISIS dildo flag at London Pride to start a dialogue, not get a laugh. I mean, this is the kind of thing.
That's even worse than the one before.
Oh, wow.
They do get progressively worse. Is it personal?
But I mean, this video is going to get demonetized just for reading out these titles.
If the personal is political, is it ever okay to want a spanking? I mean, I assume that's maybe from Nigel Farage, you know, maybe Daddy Farage. The Guardian want a spanking from Daddy Farage. I don't know. But these are the things that X is going to miss out on from the Guardian's own account. I mean, honestly, I think Elon Musk
Quite funny though.
really
I wish
must
they
worry.
stayed.
Exactly, they are so completely out of touch, and it's. I mean, it is hilarious.
I
Yeah.
can't believe those headlines. I can't believe that came out of a supposedly reputable newspaper.
I mean, Alex, you work in tech. Do you think these people will end up coming back with the tail between their legs? Because X is a pretty big deal, right?
You know what will happen is it will end. Well, I put up the graph today of their readership, which has been constantly declining year on year. They had a small uptick, I think, during COVID, but it's probably at rock bottom. And I think what will happen is it will get into so much financial difficulty. I mean, I have to go on Guardian sometimes. We all have to do our jobs here, right? And we do a lot of Stu TV. And whenever you go on there, they're begging for you to give them a quid.
Yeah.
So I highly suspect what's going to happen is as it starts going bust, a new editor will come in and bring them back onto all these platforms. But I mean, whether they'll be welcomed back, I mean, it would just be another baptism of fire if they do return. But they will because X is surging, its users are surging. Why leave? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to know what these people are actually putting into their weed. Quinoa, maybe? Does that give you hallucinations? It's bizarre. It really is bizarre. And they are the same kind of people that will no doubt be applauding what's happened to poor Alison Pearson. So,
I can't believe that you can get a non-crime hate incident probably for, just writing a tweet along the lines of Hamas are terrorists, but then you don't get in any trouble for writing something about ISIS dildo flags for The Guardian. I mean, just someone make it make sense, please, honestly. I am baffled.
I just feel like these people are mentally ill. They're sick. And I feel like, left-wingism has become a mental health disorder. Like wokeism has become a mental health disorder. I feel like these people, they're not okay in the head. And they see us as the far right. I don't know if it's a lack of spirituality or a lack of God or lack of whatever it is, but I just don't feel like these people are okay. And I feel like they've got personal beef with Elon Musk. He's against transgenderism.
Yeah.
He doesn't buy into the whole more woke mind virus. And these people are all about the woke mind virus. So I feel like that's another dimension of why they are living X. But I just feel like they need help.
Paul said, to anyone joining, this isn't Pornhub. Thank you very much for alerting them to that. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I mean, Alex says these headlines are terrorism to my eyes. Well, Alex, you should report The Guardian for a non-crime hate incident, and we'll see if the bobbies turn up at the offices of The Guardian to lecture them on their bizarre ISIS dildo references and fantasies about quinoa. But anyway, right, what else have we got before we get our guest who'll hopefully be joining us shortly? But I want to play this clip from Nigel Farage, who viewers might remember the Chagos Islands, where the Labour government basically said that they would sign them over and we'd get absolutely naff all for it, but we would pay them for the pleasure. You couldn't make it up. And we'd pay for the migrants that end up arriving on the Chagos Islands to be deported all the way to, St. Helena, and which is, by the way, where Napoleon spent his last years. There's a history lesson for you. And the new administration are apparently of the view that this was a very stupid thing to do. I mean, yes, because it's strategic, gives you... you lose a strategic advantage as a consequence of giving over these islands for absolutely nothing, with Mauritius being a close ally of the Chinese Communist Party. So anyway, Nigel Farage stood up. Obviously, last week he was at Mar-a-Lago celebrating with President Trump, and he's had conversations with those in the Trump administration or who are rumoured to be joining the Trump administration. And he had this to say in the House of Commons today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mauritius has no legal or historical claim to the sovereignty of a group of islands that are 1,300 miles away from where it is. Nor does from the International Court, it was purely an advisory opinion. There is no legal reason why we have to do any of this. Now, I warned the Foreign Secretary 6 weeks ago in this chamber that it was an enormous mistake to do this, given that we had a US presidential election coming up on November the 5th. And if you say to me, well, yes, it's okay, the United States are fully in favour, really? I can tell you that the incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, has form on this, right back to when the Right Honourable Member for Braintree was doing his best to give away the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. Indeed, he wrote to Secretary of State Blinken at the time. There is, I can assure you, having been in America last week, knowing also the incoming Defence Secretary very well, there is outright hostility to this deal. Whatever is said about a lease agreement, as we saw with Hong Kong, these agreements can very, very easily be broken. Diego Garcia was described to me by a senior Trump advisor as the most important island on the planet as far as America was concerned. So you're going to find outright hostility. And by the way, when it comes to the Chagossian people, yes, of course, what happened to them was truly awful. They do not wish to live. They're unanimous in this. They do not wish to live under Mauritian rule. They want to live under British rule because they actually trust us. There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
Very well said, I thought, and actually a blessing in disguise that James Cleverly wasn't elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party, I think. Nigel was right to also reprimand him. So the fact of the matter is that on everything that the Labour Party are doing right now, the national interest seems to finish last. Actually, it's the interest, look no further than the COP29 conference, the United Nations conference yesterday. Sir Keir Starmer basically there on his own. No other world leader of a developed economy such as ours was at this conference, yet he's just signed us up to even more restrictive climate targets, signed us up to billions more quid in spending on net zero, and the Chagos Islands. It's all adding up to a narrative which suggests that Sir Keir Starmer couldn't give a flying flamingo about the national interest. Who wants to go first on that?
Yeah, I'll take a pop at it. I think the reality is setting in on this Labour government that they have been after 14 years in opposition, completely unprepared and probably surprised that they're actually governing. Mistake number one, putting David Lammy in any position of authority is just absolutely insane. That is literally like putting Diane Abbott in charge of a Tesco's checkout. I mean, she can't even count her change. It's ridiculous. It really is that ridiculous. but I think, Nigel, I mean, it was, first of all, really entertaining to see Jeremy Corbyn sat there looking at Nigel Farage. I bet he never expected to see that in his political career.
No,
but
and he's been in there a long time.
He has, yeah. So I think Nigel's absolutely right. It's what we've been saying all along. We've been saying that why the hell are we giving up these islands? I personally think the Democrats would be all for this, though. Seeing what an absolute show they were in the lead up to the election and how far left they've gone, I suspect they are all pro giving up territory for whatever reason. But we all know that the Republicans were going to win. I don't think they factored that in there. Keir Starmer made that huge mistake of allowing his staffers to go over there, thinking, probably taking advice from Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, that they were going to win by a landslide. So I think this is going to backfire massively. And if it ends up that Trump's administration, say absolutely this is not happening, it's going to be absolute egg on Keir Starmer's face, and I would love for that to happen.
Yes.
I mean, I really hope that Elon and Trump together just completely take the piss out of David Lammy and Keir Starmer over the next few years. I mean, it would be really interesting to see if they're able to put enough pressure on Keir Starmer to get rid of David Lammy. I mean, we've had a close ally of Trump posting on Twitter, I think it was yesterday or the day before, saying, he's looking forward to David Lammy's apology, before the relationship with Britain is able to foster again. It's going to be an interesting few years, and we'll see how long David Lammy lasts.
Well, hopefully not very. I mean, I can't stand the man. To be honest, I can't stand any of them, though, so I don't discriminate. Yes. Well, actually, do you know what? I did congratulate Wes Streeting today, because I think he's the only one in that cabinet that is willing to actually scrutinise what assisted dying will actually mean in practice, because he's looked at the state of palliative care within the NHS, end-of-life care, and actually it doesn't really exist in the NHS anymore. People are left to die of dehydration and all the rest of it. It's pretty sinister. So he's actually scrutinising it, and I do like that. But that's the only praise that I'll give this lot. They're an absolute shower. 14 years to do what? Twiddle your bloody thumbs. Tweet about I don't know, penchant of quinoa in The Guardian. Write articles about ISIS dildos in The Guardian. Is that what you've been doing for the last 14 years? Because you've been doing naff all else. You haven't been planning for government. But actually, Younes, I think, Alex mentioned that Jeremy Corbyn was behind Nigel Farage there. I do think that we ought to give a shout out to Jeremy Corbyn, because he's lost an awful lot of friends recently through bomb. And I think actually he must be feeling it very sadly. He's lost friends in Hamas, he's lost friends in Hezbollah, and it must be a tragic time for him. So I would like to reach across the political aisle and offer a handshake. I really would.
Yeah, obviously all his friends are dead, and most of those other friends that live in council estates in I think it's in was it Hampstead, some of these ex-Hamas members that he actually advocated for to get council properties. And in terms of David Lammy, the guy can't even wear a suit. Like, he looks uncomfortable in a suit, like, I'm like, how is this guy the foreign secretary of this country?
Does he often wear like sneakers with his suit rather than proper shoes?
But he just looks uncomfortable.
Got mocked for that, right?
He's not made for a suit. And the fact that this guy is the foreign secretary of the United Kingdom is just embarrassing. Like, the fact that this is the guy that has to go abroad and negotiate with other countries. And he's such an idiot. He could have at least kept Trump sweet, because he could have had made that calculation in his head that there is a chance that Trump might win. So maybe I should be nice to him, or I shouldn't be so critical of him. And same goes with Sadiq Khan and all these idiots. So now this Labour government is in a very weird position where they have made themselves the enemies of the Republican Party. And because of that, Trump is not going to go easy on them, and we're not going to get the best deals. Our only hope is Nigel Farage. Like, literally, he's the only link to this government that could make something happen. But in terms of this Labour government, I just really hope there's a snap election soon and we get rid of them. Because the problem is, we have Trump in power now for the next 4 years, but now, unfortunately, we have Labour for the next 5 years. Yeah. Unless J.D. Vance manages to win, back-to-back elections, we need to move. Like, the whole of Europe needs to move from this left madness they're in, because unfortunately most of the governments in United Kingdom, in Germany, in France, they're all left-wing, and we need to bring it at least back to the center or center-right, so at least we can get something done moving forward.
We've got news just in, because the government have confirmed that the average family faces inflation-busting council tax rises of more than £100 come April. The Prime Minister's press secretary said town halls would be told they could put up the levy by as much as 5% next year, which is 3 times the rate of inflation. Why are they doing that? Well, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the one with the bob, actually looks slightly robotic but hasn't got the intellect of an artificial intelligence software. Well, actually, she put up national insurance for employers. Well, guess who employers are? Well, they're your bin collectors, they're your care workers, they're your NHS workers, there are a whole slew of public sector office workers. And the cost of hiring them is going up. So who's going to pay for it? Well, guess what? It's you, Muggins. So when they promised that they wouldn't raise taxation on workers, well, they have bloody well gone and done that. And Kemi Badenoch said exactly this, and she has actually forced them to come clean about this.
Has made life more expensive with his unilateral commitments, but speaking of making life more expensive, will the Prime Minister confirm that he will keep the cap on council tax?
Mr. Speaker, she talks of the trip to COP. I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, to the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so. On the question of council, she knows what the arrangements are.
I think the House would have heard that the Prime Minister could neither confirm nor deny whether there was a cap in council tax was being raised. So I will ask him this question. How much extra does he expect local authorities will have to raise to cover the social care funding gap created by the Chancellor's budget and increases in employers' NI? He told the member for Edinburgh West just now that he was covering social care. How much extra does he expect local authorities to raise?
Well, that in a bombshell. He's turning around to Kemi, right, and he's saying, well, actually, this is a red herring. You're criticising me for going to this COP29 conference with, I was going to say the world's elite, but actually even the world's elite said, no thanks, I ain't going to Azerbaijan for a circle jerk on climate change. And Sir Keir Starmer says, oh, well, we've got this £1 billion deal for Hull to build wind turbines. Actually, that was signed in the last government, you lion charlatan. And ultimately, I think if you were to ask the people of Hull whether or not they'd like a few jobs for wind turbines which have to be replaced every decade, or whether they'd like to be able to afford energy and afford to pay their council tax, that they might well say, Mr. Keir Starmer, you can sod off with your priorities of the globalists and actually focus on our priorities. So, oh, that man is just so infuriating. I think by the time, you mentioned 18 weeks, Alex, of this government. I feel like I've aged 18 years.
Yeah, tell me about it. Seriously, tell me about it. It has baffled me to see how scrappy and how out of shape they are so quickly. I mean, you only got to, whether or not you liked the Blair government, and trust me, I really didn't, look at how organised they were coming in fresh off the government. Their policy agenda was clear. People loved them at the time. Of course, we can look back and change our opinions, but at the time they did really well. This government is utterly unprepared. He's losing PMQs to Kemi Badenoch. It's her first time. Yeah. What an embarrassment. He's had years of practice against Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss and whoever else has been Prime Minister in between. And yet Kemi Badenoch in her first test has smashed him, absolutely smashed him. They are clueless, they are planless, they're morons, they don't know what they're doing, and everything they have done has driven the country into more poverty.
Chloe, our guest has joined, and I'm going to get to Cllr Nathan Evans in a second from Trafford Conservatives. And I want to play you, though, this clip that you might have seen online, Chloe. And it's from Ireland, but I think actually it's relevant because this woman here is homeless. And the woman next to her, who apparently came from abroad, has been given housing. But I just want to play the clip because then we can summarise what I'm going to talk to Councillor Evans about.
Came to us tonight from a homeless hub. Yeah. You've been there since last June, is that right? Yeah. You're there and you have your 4-year-old son with you and he has complex medical needs. Yeah. Can you just very quickly tell us, how did you end up there in this situation?
So I was private renting a property for $2,700 a month, and issues came across with my little boy's crash, so I left my job and I just couldn't sustain the rent and I had to declare myself homeless.
So the hub, you've been in the hub since then?
Yeah.
How are you finding it there?
Very hard.
Last year you got a call from Wicklow County Council that changed your life.
Yes. I received that letter very unexpectedly. basically saying that I was being nominated for housing if I was interested, which absolutely. And I was put forward and I was accepted by the cooperative housing, and we've been in our forever home since.
Forever home, yeah. Whilst that woman there is on the streets. I mean, the reason I play that clip is because what's going on in Altrincham in Greater Manchester, where you've got the 300 male, well, they'll be primarily male because we all know that that's the majority of those that are coming over on the small boats, etc. It seems to be that the indigenous population are very much at the back, and the illegal immigrant population are very much at the front. And we can't go on like this if you want to actually keep faith and trust in British institutions. Do you see what I mean, Chloe?
I mean, it is just disgusting. Just watching that video. I mean, first of all, 2.7k a month having to pay that just to house yourself and your little son. I presume this might be near Dublin, where they've got an absolutely horrific housing crisis there. You have to queue up for hours and hours and hours just to view a room. I had a friend send me a picture of her standing in the queue view a room in a property, and it was just truly insane. And I think so. I mean, first of all, just how crazy the rents are to house yourself and a child just goes to show we haven't got enough housing to house ourselves, let alone more people coming into this country. I've just had enough of people calling us racist and anti-migrant, as if we don't care about people around the world, for saying like we can't pay our rents, we can't house our own people here, like normal, unless you're really rich and you've got a huge big job, it's becoming like impossible just to get a roof over your head. We've got rise in in what we call the so-called working homeless of people like living in tents in their friend's back garden with their kids because they can't pay just to rent to put a roof over their heads. And we're meant to be a first world country, and then to allow people to just waltz up, come here either on a boat or say legally where they've applied for refugee status and come across, and for them to be given like free housing, it is just disgusting. I've had enough of it.
Guys,
just a
before
supply and demand issue.
Yeah, oh, definitely. But guys, before I bring you in, I'm going to get to Councillor Evans now because I'm conscious that I've left him waiting very patiently there in the green room. But I'll come back to the grotto after this interview because now, my friends, it's time for this. Hello, Councillor Evans. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm looking in the wrong camera. That would help. Now, Nathan, I wonder... Can you actually explain, first of all, because Altrincham's very much been at the forefront of this debate at the moment, with the uproar over the Cresta Court Hotel being used to house 300 asylum seekers, debatable, but while claims have actually been made about private healthcare for migrants and actually the local services that you provide as a council, I wonder if you might explain why you, in particular, before I play a clip of what happened in the hall that you hired for this discussion, why have you been so vocal about this particular issue? Is this you just electioneering? Have you got elections in May? Or is this you deeply conscious of the fact that there is a great injustice being done on your constituents?
So, firstly, thank you for having me on. And thank you for highlighting this topic, which is the whole town, the whole of Trafford is passionate about. So no, we're not electioneering. We have no elections next year. We don't have a general election, as we all know, unfortunately, for at least another 4.5 years. We're stuck with what we've got. So it's not electioneering. It's just I have been contacted by hundreds of people. People stop me in the street and say, thank you for standing up for us on this cause. The councillors in the area have not stood up for the residents, and the residents' voices are just muted. They're not interested in hearing what the residents have got to say. So I've simply taken their voices and amplified them and asked the questions that the council, the MP, the other councillors that are not Conservatives are refusing to hear from the residents.
Yeah. All right. Well, you've made clear that you are going to force that conversation, and you did bring about that conversation. despite, cancellations of events that you'd organised in the past. Because I actually found you one of your videos while I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw that you had an event cancelled, and you said, right, I ain't giving up, and I'm going to make sure that people do have their voices heard. And this is what happened when you actually did manage to get people gathered together to be heard.
And there's things like the input to hospitals, doctors, dentists, the facilities we have. We're already fairly stretched, I feel, in the area. Is that going to be something?
So my understanding is they've contracted with GoDoc, which I think is the sort of nighttime service. It's a private doctor's system. And my understanding, that's not a statement. But that should mean they won't be putting weight on our local
the local surgeries for the local doctors.
We're on 3 years waiting list at the hospital, and we're finding out that our service that's given to taxpayers in the UK isn't good enough. And they're in Bradford. Are they really seriously on
again, well, let's find out. I think it's important. Is it a burden on us? Is the council paying for that? I know the council are getting some funding to support this. I know it's inadequate.
Now, I mean, on that point of inadequacy of funding and all the rest of it, the point is, right, no one wants this. That if you ask the public, I bet you, if you were to poll your constituents, the public anger and the fact that, the police were stood there basically saying, oh, well, you're probably all safe, but no guarantees, because the vetting of many of these people can't be done in an adequate way, that actually it's enraging people to the point of wanting to spit blood. I mean, it's doing a real disservice to community cohesion and actually the unity of us as a democracy, isn't it?
Well, it is. So we run these online petitions every now and again, and they get reasonable response. We're over 4,000 in about 6 days. That is unheard of in a small community petition. We're going to take that to the Home Office next week and deliver it on behalf of the residents. The residents are incandescent, basically. They are on edge. The town feels a little bit on edge. Nobody quite knows what's happening. Total blank from the council, total blank from the Home Office. We've written 2 letters to the Home Office, not even an acknowledgement. So we will keep banging on and getting the answers because people are frightened, concerned, worried about the spend, not sure when it's going to end. It's a difficult time for residents.
And I mean, the frustration that was voiced by the residents when one of the police inspectors actually suggested that previous groups of migrants have caused no issues. And, locals argue that actually that's it's a false comparison. I mean, do you agree with that? And ultimately, is the answer here that the fact is nobody wants these people here, so they shouldn't be here, and that if the government actually delivered what the people wanted, they would start deportations?
I suppose in a way that is correct, but we've not had a hotel of male asylum seekers in Trafford. We've got a hotel of 116 family members, not the same family, but you get the point there. If you've got a mother, father, child, mother, 2 children, totally different scenario to 300 or 296 males, unattached, nothing to do. And to say that the risk in Altrincham hasn't increased can't be right. The residents know it's not right, but that's what we're getting from the council, that's what we're getting from the MP, and that's what we're getting from the Home Office. So until we get some proper answers as to what the checks are that's been done, what are the checks that prove that? The residents just don't believe what they are being told.
We've had people come into this country, and this isn't me, spouting conspiracy theory. This is, you can go look through the court system. We've had people arrive here illegally over the English Channel who have committed murder in Europe, and we haven't been able to actually check that, verify that, and they've gone on to commit a murder in this country. There was an aspiring Royal Marine who springs to mind quite often, who lost his life at the hands of a blade from an illegal migrant who had shot someone to death abroad. And the fact of the matter is, how can any of the residents actually guarantee that that won't happen to their communities, to their sons, to their daughters? It's about accountability and it's about transparency. And I just feel that the council, but also the government in general, the Labour government, they're not being open with people, and they're being, dare I say, deliberately, misleading.
I think it's unfair to say these people have been checked to our residents without actually saying, and this is how they have been checked. There is no confidence. And just to say it's platitudes, and we are pursuing that and will not stop pursuing that because it is false and unfair for the town. It's going to harm business. People don't want to walk anywhere. Kids going to school. It's a difficult time. Every resident with a young child, honestly, is worried.
And you might put up council tax, right? Because the Labour Party are saying that they're going to raise the cap, so you can put up council tax by 5%. That's just come out tonight. Why should people pay more council tax for foreigners with no right to be here?
Well, I would agree, and it's not just 5%, Darren, is it? It's 5% plus the 2% social care levy. So It's currently capped in Trafford at 4.99%. As you say, that's gone. So it's now 4.99, 6.99 without a referendum. So they will take that money. There is no doubt. But for what? We are getting less. The money's being mismanaged. And it's the residents are just being taken for a ride.
I mean, the point there that really got people's back up, and I'm sure you know that you did go viral on the old internet, but the point that got people's back up was the fact that they can't, and I get messages from people all the time saying, Darren, I can't get access to a dentist, an NHS dentist. They say, Darren, I'm on a waiting list for NHS treatment. I mean, I know for a fact that my own grandmother had a hip operation scheduled that was cancelled, delayed, and ultimately she had to go on in pain until it was eventually done. But why should residents like that in this country, who have always paid their fair share, always worked damn well hard, they're struggling right now, their employers are going through it because of this Labour budget, why should they watch and stand by idly with their fingers in their ears or maybe over their eyes with watching through the cracks of their fingers, whilst illegal migrants get a standard of healthcare that you would expect of those living in Chelsea and not those who have come here over on a small boat from Calais? You know, it strikes me as a deep injustice more than anything else.
Well, there's no doubt there is a different contract being taken out by the Integrated Care Board here in order to provide health services to this hotel.
So
now,
wrong.
Interestingly, maybe it takes the lid off the whole thing nationally, in that potentially every hotel in the country has got its own different doctor service. We've had our minor injuries unit closed here. We've campaigned on it and campaigned on it and campaigned on it. And Labour, well, they actually came out, one of them said they're too wealthy to need a minor injuries unit. It's more spend the money elsewhere, which is so the level of prejudice towards our area is difficult to comprehend. So we've lost our minor injuries unit, but we have these people on a different track for healthcare. Now, there's a lot of drilling down to what that actually means, but there is a separate contract to look after these people that I cannot access. If I won't say feel ill, I can't think how, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I feel ill, I cannot access the level of service that these people seem to access. It's so wrong. And that's why the people in the meeting were particularly upset.
And why are you unable to actually see the detail of this? Why is it so clandestine?
Well, we are asking. All I can say is we keep asking the questions. I've got questions in council next week specifically about the checks, and it's got a long way to run this. We are being stonewalled. The residents are being stonewalled. And unfortunately, it falls to my 8 councillors out of 63. The Green councillors, not interested, more interested in dropping off a compendium of games to entertain these people than actually standing up for the residents in the area. It falls to 8 councillors out of 63 to say, the residents need to be heard. These are the questions. Where do we find the answers? MP's been absent, council's been absent, and the rest of the council have been absent. It's outrageous.
And just finally, some of the viewers there are saying, well, hang on, why do people not contact their MPs? Well, actually, if I've got this right, the MP has been contacted. Connor is his name, Connor Rand, and he has faced intense backlash. And apparently he said, well, it's above his pay grade.
Well, I can only, I didn't hear that, but if people have heard him say that, I'm not defending that at all. But what I would say is when we had a different MP last year, when the Conservatives were in control of the government and did exactly the same thing, we also were outraged, called a public meeting. The MP stood up, got hold of the immigration minister, had the arguments in government, and we ended up with the families, as we described earlier. Yeah. Not 300 males, frightening everybody.
Yeah.
So it's a different reaction from a Conservative MP arguing with a Conservative government. We've got a Labour MP who seems unable to argue with his own government, and a Labour council who won't argue with it, and locally a Labour mayor quite happy to throw Altrincham under the bus.
Absolutely. Their head, it seems to be up their bottom and not on their job. But anyway, the final question that I have for you, Councillor Evans, is your party, the Conservative Party. Obviously, there was, during the long protracted leadership election, there was a lot of debate about the efficacy of the current setup that we're in legally. So leaving the ECHR, for example, was a big dispute. Would you like to see your party commit to that to ensure that your residents don't have to endure this, well, for what feels like the rest of eternity?
If that is what it takes to get people out, to get people controlled properly, to control the borders, to use a frequently used phrase, then that would have to be. But I cannot believe it's not possible to do that. You hear stories of the rest of Europe doing the Rwanda-style schemes and now moving towards that. We've just, the government came in, first thing it did, scrap the Rwanda scheme. You know what? The boat crossings have skyrocketed. And I can't see it ending without some level of deterrent. And that's all it was. It was a deterrent. We were getting there. It took so long, and that's what's difficult. And if it takes coming out of the ECHR, whichever way around it takes that, then that's what it would have to be.
All right, Councillor Evans, thank you very much for your time today, and keep up exposing this, because I tell you what, you're not only doing your residents a real service here, I think you're actually doing the country a real service. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for highlighting it, and always give me a call if you want me on again. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, bye for now.
Right, my panel. Thank you for waiting around there. You heard what Councillor Evans had to say. I've returned to the grotto to find out what you've got to say. I mean, Chloe, are you surprised by all of this? Have you been following this story? I don't actually know. Oh, Chloe, I think you've muted yourself. Hang on. She's muted. She's on mute. There you are.
I've unmuted myself. I apologise for that. I didn't want to talk over Councillor Evans by accident earlier, so I had muted myself. Really fantastic to hear from him there. To where we've got a little bit of grey areas. You never know what is reported in the press is right and what is going on the ground. It's really interesting to actually hear it from him to really understand what is happening. I think that he made lots of great points there, but one thing I want to pick up on is the point he made about the difference in risk to the community of having groups of families there versus having groups of just men there. And I think it was an important point he said, where if you've got men who are not tied to any wife or any child to look after, and they are just bored with nothing to do, right? These people, they haven't been approved yet to get jobs. I mean, some of them might do some, cash in hand stuff. But when you put a bunch of men together just sitting around with nothing to do, that's inevitably going to result in, you know, gangs going round, trouble being caused. I don't think it takes someone that intelligent to realise that. Whereas if you've got families there, yes, there may still be concerns about vetting and whatnot, but it's a very different situation. Also, just absolutely shocking to hear there about the difference in response when it comes to Conservative MPs and Conservative governments being asked about what's happening in the community versus what's happening with the Labour MP and the Labour Council, where they just seem to be really rudely ignoring everyone. I was really shocked to hear that.
Yes, I mean, the fact of the matter is, though, Younes, is that this is going to get worse because for some reason, Younes, you're on mute now.
No, I muted myself. Don't worry.
Younes, the problem is that this is going to get worse because Labour MPs have signed an early day motion in Parliament in which it's been signed by 24 members so far, which says that actually we should bring over people from Gaza. And that is a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
I just don't know what to say. Look, first of all, you know, we give up islands. We're getting weaker and weaker all the time. We talk about paying reparations, whilst the people that live on this island are getting poorer. They can't get accommodation. They can't, you know, rent a flat. They can't afford a flat. And our next brilliant idea is to bring the Gazans over. Well, what's a brilliant idea? Yeah, let's bring another 2 million people into the country. And yeah, you know, increase. And everyone's going to move to London, obviously, or Manchester, or Birmingham, or Dublin, you know. And so it's going to increase the rent prices even higher. And ever since last year, the rents have gone up by 25%, which is insane. And they're still going up. So I just don't understand how this government thinks. You know, they cut the winter payment for the pensioners and then they debate whether they should pay reparations. Like, I just don't understand it. And then, you know, we can't look after our own. We're losing islands. And then they're like, instead of trying to bring down inflation, instead of trying to bring down the cost of living, energy prices, you know, drilling for oil, so we don't have to pay so much for oil. They put wind farms, and all at the same time they want to bring 2 million people in, and people from Ukraine, and all people from Afghanistan, and all over the world. And I just don't understand. You know, when Donald Trump says we are the common sense party, I feel like we need the common sense party in this country, because what they do just doesn't make sense to me. And it's almost beyond logic for me that a government can be so dumb.
Yeah. Alex, before I let you all go, because I'm conscious I've kept you for a wee while, one of our viewers has a really, I think, pertinent question, which asks actually why this is taken place. You know, the question says, I'm just looking for it now. I've lost it, I'm afraid. What's happening to Ireland is shameful and disrespectful to the people of Ireland, but of course the same thing is happening here. And it's Stephen, my good friend Stephen. Why are governments doing this? What is the end game? Answers on a postcard. You know, what is the end game? Why are they doing it, Alex? Because I think this is genuinely a crisis for democracy, because people, when the ballot box is broken, Alex, where do people go?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Well, first of all, if we're talking specifically about mass immigration, it's quite clear governments for a very, very long time have pretended and used mass immigration as a way to falsely inflate their GDP figures and to stay on top. And we actually know now that the GDP per capita is making us all poorer. So it's been about a race to the top to stay in the game. I think actually Britain sits about 26th on the table now on GDP per capita. That's how poor we are. We're becoming a third tier nation. It's really important British people wake up and see this. We are not as rich as we're made out to be, and we're about to get a lot poorer. The end game is to replace the voters of this country with a whole different demographic of people and gaslight you along the way. The Democrats have been trying this for a while, and Trump has just put an absolute stop to that, and he will put a complete stop to that when he closes the border and starts mass deportating.
Can we swap?
Yeah, well, I'd love that, Darren. I'd absolutely love Trump to be over here. I'd cut off my right arm because I believe he'd save this country in a minute, and I'm sure he can do it much quicker here than he would in America. But the answer is that you end up having a complete change of values. British culture dies, and then you don't get this so-called, what they believe we are, a very entitled, privileged group of people. They can tax out of their backside. So their end game of the socialist and globalist movement is to create no culture, no borders, and to have this globalist power that unfortunately is unstoppable. And that is their end game. It's quite obvious. It's in all of their documents.
Yes. Well, all right, guys. If there's any further comments or none, then I will allow you to go off and enjoy your evening. But
all
thank
part
you
of the
very
plan.
much.
You have to get rid of the globalists. That's all I have to say. We have to get rid of the globalists and bring the populist in. That's all I've got to say.
But who do we vote for? I mean, who do we vote for?
I mean, Nigel Farage is our best option, but even that, I just don't think there's enough quality politicians in this country. There isn't.
Well, you can
You know,
say
it's
that
just
again.
they're not. Is the Conservatives, Labour, you know, there's only a handful. We need more. But look at America, for example. Look at the team that they have: Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, JD Vance. All these people. Look at the team that they have. You know, we need a team like that in Britain.
I think our political system doesn't help, right? I think our voting system doesn't help, and all the rest of it. You know, the president is able to bring in a team. The prime minister of the United Kingdom can only bring in a team that actually is elected as parliamentarians. That's a massive problem, right? As far as talent's concerned. So I don't know. I love this country with all of my heart. I really do. I think it's an ancient project, very much worth saving. But I'm deeply scared. I'm deeply troubled. But I keep having to remind myself that it's worth the fight. You know, our ancestors didn't go through what they went through, that we commemorated on Sunday, just for us to shrug our shoulders and say, "Oh, to hell with it, I can't be arsed." You know, that would be doing them a great disservice and a massive, well, frankly, pissing on their graves. And I think that we absolutely cannot do that. We must not do that. So on that solemn note, I'll let you all bid you adieu and say goodbye. But I also want to thank Cllr Evans for attending, for appearing as well. I thought that was interesting to hear from him, and it just reveals the extent of the problem that we're in. But thank you very much, guys. And don't forget, you at home, to hit the subscribe button, share, and do consider supporting us if you're in a position to do so. It helps keep us on air. And these people are so expensive, I've got to pay a massive wage bill. So, you know, please do help, because Chloe has got some Chanel goodies that she wants to buy, and she's been asking Lord Ali. But Lord Ali hasn't replied to her yet. So in the interim,
my nails aren't done. I need somebody to pay for me to get my nails done.
See, there we are. There we are. Priorities, Chloe, priorities. All right. Good night, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.